If you've been around the Ruby community for some time now, you've probably heard of Ruby gems and maybe even used a Ruby gem yourself. For example, Rails. Rails is a very popular Ruby gem, as you may know, and it's so popular it's been downloaded as of this video almost 65 million times. So it's a quite popular gem. Now, iOS has something very, very similar to Ruby gems. They're called Cocoapods, and they can be found at cocodocs.org. And in this video, what we're going to be doing is just demonstrating how to get a Cocopod installed within your iOS application, and then begin using some of the functionality that those Cocoapods, or that this particular Cocopod, offers. So for this video, we're going to be using the AFNetworking Cocopod, and it's a very popular Cocopod. You can go to their GitHub page and read all about it there. But to get this installed within your RubyMotion application, HipByte, the creators of RubyMotion, have created a Ruby gem known as Motion Cocoapods. And this allows you to pull in those third-party libraries known as Cocoapods into your iOS or your OS X application. So let's go ahead and just jump in here. If we scroll down here, we can see that we have a README file. First thing we want to do is add Motion Cocoapods to our gem file. So if I open up my gem file and just place that in there under add your dependencies here, then I go back into there and make sure I require Ruby gems and Motion Cocopod within our rake file. So I'll pull that up right under bundler. I'll go ahead and paste that in as well. We want to go ahead and specify the pods that we want to include within our application. And we do that right over here. So right under this info plist, I'm going to go ahead and paste that information in there. We're going to use AFNetworking just like the example on the Motion Cocoapods README says. If you were going to use a different Cocopod, you'd want to make sure that you change the name in between these single quotes to the Cocopod of your choice. And you can, of course, use multiple Cocoapods, so you can just duplicate this line and change the names accordingly. Let's go ahead and remove this. So we're just going to use one pod here. And what we'll do next is, of course, pod setup. So this will be the first time that we're running Cocoapods within this application. So we're going to want to bundle exec or just run pod setup here. And that's what I'll do. I'll open up my terminal here and I'll type in that command. So pod setup. Then I'll click on enter on my keyboard, and then it's going to go ahead and set everything up. Now, this might take a little while since this is the first time I'm setting everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this while it sets everything up on my machine, and then I'll restart the video once it does. So the pod setup has finished. Now what we want to do is jump back into those instructions, and then we want to do a rake pod install. So what this will do is it'll install the pods that are currently in my rake file. So that will install the AF networking. So let's go ahead and just paste that in there and run that. Once this is done installing, we can begin adding some functionality from that AF networking Cocopod. So we'll jump into our AF networking GitHub, and then we'll scroll down here a little bit. You can actually now skip the getting started guide because RubyMotion's Motion Cocopod gem has already set everything up for you. So you can go ahead and skip that. Let's go ahead and go back, and let's just go into the documentation itself. Now, if you have the chance, definitely go through the AF networking Cocopod documentation. I've already gone through it, so I'm going to use one of the AF HTTP session manager classes, and I'm just going to get a URL, and this will be a get. We're going to pass parameters and specify if we want that progress to be shown, the success and the failure of it. So this is what the Objective-C format of this looks like. So we'll copy and paste that in. But before we do, we actually have to go ahead and bundle install that Cocopod gem. So, or that Motion Cocoapods gem. So what we'll do is we'll go bundle install, and we'll just press enter, and this will make sure that that's installed. Now, I already have Motion Cocoapods installed on my SDK here. So as you saw, it was super quick, but if this is the first time you're getting that installed, then it's going to take a little bit. With that installed, we can now go ahead and move forward. I know it seems a little bit messy, but I'll try to do my best to explain what's going on there. So we'll jump into our load view, and I'll just paste that in there and comment that out. So the first thing that we want to do is create a new session manager for this. So right above this commented out section, I'm going to just type in manager for the variable, and then we're going to go back into Safari here and grab the class for this. So it'll be AF HTTP session manager. Then we're going to go ahead and just paste that in there. I'll call new on it. And then right under this commented out area, I'll try to run this method here. So what we'll do is we'll take the manager and we will pass get. So this is a get method. And then we pass in the URL. So we got the get URL string. And what we're going to do is we're just going to place a string in there for the URL that we want to go ahead and get information from. Now, I'm going to copy a JSON URI from a website I found online. So if you go to gearside.com/public JSON feeds, it'll give you 9 cool public JSON feeds that you could go ahead and test out. Some of these I don't believe are working, but the one we're going to use is a random number generator, and that is number 7 right here. So we'll take this URI and we'll go ahead and we'll place that there. Then the next thing we have to do is go ahead and specify if we want parameters. And I don't want to pass any parameters in here, but if you do, you would specify them like a hash. So I'm just going to go ahead and put nil, and then I'm going to pass in nil for the progress as well. So it's just going to be a very simple example. And the last 2 things you have to pass through is a block for success and a block for failure. So for this, what we're going to do is we're going to pass through a lambda. And we're going to do it for both of these. So I'm just going to bring them to their own line. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll start that out. So lambda, and then we'll go ahead and place our curly braces. Okay, and these blocks, if you go back into the documentation here, these blocks need to pass 2 arguments, one for the data task and one for the response object. And for the failure, you need one for the data task and one for the error itself. So let's go back into here. So we're going to pass through those 2. We have the task and the response. I'm just going to go ahead and place the response into our terminal. And then for this one, we have the task and the error. And so for this, I'm just going to place that error into our terminal and call localized description. Otherwise, it's going to give us an NS error object, and it's not going to explain anything to us. So we need that localized description. Okay, make sure I spelled that correctly. Looks like lambda. Lambda is missing that B there. Okay, so that's working. All right, so this should now run for us. So it's very simple. We're creating that manager, and then we're getting the information from this URI. And we're not passing through any parameters here. We're not doing anything with the progress. We're just going to display whether it's successful or whether it failed. And if it failed, we want to get a description of why it failed. So before I leave this file, I do see that there is an error here, so I need to remove that. Now the file is checking out. And now we can go ahead and try to run rake and see if this will work. So as soon as the load view gets loaded, what's going to happen is it's going to run this and either give us an error or a response. And it looks like we have an SSL error has occurred and a secure section to the server cannot be made. So what we could try to do is we could try to go into our rake file and we could try to use a non-secure method. So what we would do is we would just add a new line here. It'll be app and info. Actually, I'll paste in this entire line here. And so it'll be app info plist ns app transport security ns allow arbitrary loads and set that to true. So this will allow us to use a non-secured connection. And so what we'll do is we'll exit out of this and we'll run rake again. And what should happen is this should actually work. And it does work, so we're seeing the success, we're seeing the actual JSON data being passed through into our terminal. And now with this working, you can go ahead and programmatically add this into your application. Before I wrap up this video, I did want to show you that there is a RubyMotion gem for AF networking known as AFNetworking. So you'll want to check this out. I'll go ahead and I'll post this into the video description below, but this will make it a lot easier to get AF networking installed into your application. And I believe AFNetworking is also bundled with Red Potion, another RubyMotion gem that makes developing iOS applications super simple. But definitely check this out. If you've enjoyed the video, definitely give a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos. Until next time, you have a great one.